So hi, hello and welcome, Microbehunter here. Well, shopping for a microscope can be a challenging thing, especially if you don't know much about microscopes yet. And for this reason, I'd like to give you an overview of the different types of microscopes that there are. I have a whole assortment of different brands and models behind me. And I hope that in this video that this helps you to get a better overview and to help you in making a purchasing decision. And I will take my time in this video. So what I would like to do is if you want to jump ahead, please have a look at the description below, because I put some timestamps into the descriptions if you want to jump to a different chapter. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through all of those microscopes here that I've got here and to give you a little bit of an overview. If you're interested in shopping for microscopes specifically for children, maybe as a present, then I'm going to make a dedicated separate video on that, where I will be talking about microscopes that are specifically suitable for young scientists. Okay, but I would say let's get started right now. Well, there are, of course, it might seem a lot of different types of microscopes around, but actually it's not as complicated, because in many cases the differences are not that large. And the first thing that you have to consider when making a buying choice, a microscope choice, is well, which type of microscope do you want to have? And here on the left side, what I've got here, these are so-called stereomicroscopes, okay? And over here, from all the way to the corner here, all of them are referred to as compound microscopes, and they're fundamentally different. Well, both are light microscopes, but you can observe different things with them. And for example, the stereomicroscopes here, you are able to place the object directly on the stage here. And when you look through the microscope here, you will get a three-dimensional stereoscopic image, almost like looking through binoculars. So in other words, you do not need any specimen preparation in many cases. All you do is you put the object on here and you're able to look at the object. Those two stereomicroscopes are a little bit different in the way that they magnify. So over here, this one example has a 2x objective here. And I'm able, it's a little bit difficult to do with one hand, and do 4x, so it gives me 4 times 10, total maximum magnification of 40 times. So I can switch between 20 times and 40 times magnification. And this microscope over here, yeah, has a continuous zoom, a continuous magnification, which goes over here. Yeah, it goes from 0.7 times 10, 7 times, all the way up to 4.5 times 10 is 45 times. So it has a total magnification of 7 times to 45 times. So you see that the range of magnification here is larger, and it's also a continuous zoom. And here I can only switch, only under quotation marks, of course, use 20 times and 40 times. In most cases, this is definitely enough as well. And over here, what you can also see is this is a photo tube where I can connect a camera, and right now I didn't connect the camera, it's just another eyepiece, so it's also possible to look through here. Yeah, I use this for calibration. Now, those stereo microscopes, they come in many cases with a light from the top. So that's over here, it's difficult to see now. And this one also has a light coming from the bottom. I can switch this using, it's not plugged in right now, but yeah, here, by turning this, yeah. So I'm able to either have the top light or the bottom light, no light, or both of them at the same time. Focusing is done by turning this knob over here, and if the range is not enough, then I'm able to lift up the whole head up as well by loosening this screw here. I'm not going to do this now because I have to hold also the camera. This one over here, well, it has the brand Amscope written on it. However, this microscope, let me move this out of the way, also is sold under different brand names. Yeah, so many different, several different microscope brands will rebrand the microscope. And this one over here has a ring lamp attached, and there is no light coming from the bottom. I mean, there are some versions where they also have this possibility, but I chose one that doesn't. Yeah, and yeah. So basically, first decision, are you going to get a stereo microscope for observing fairly large objects under the, using stereoscopic vision, or are you more interested in one over here where you have to use dedicated microscope slides that allow you to look at the specimen. For children, if the children are young, I definitely recommend a stereo microscope because you do not need to do any specimen preparation. You collect a bug, you find a bug somewhere, you put it under the microscope, you can look at it directly, and it has a very immersive view, and the view is upright. So it's like a very strong magnifying glass. But yeah, I still would say that the image is significantly more impressive than looking through a magnifying glass. Yeah? So for young children, this one is certainly to be recommended because it's also easier to use. Now let's go over here and let's have a look at some of those compound microscopes that I have here. And yeah, all of them fundamentally are very, very similar in the sense that they have down here objectives of different magnification, also can be adjusted here by rotating, and of course also eyepieces. Now important is the following. Okay, I did not include any eyepieces here. I'd have to, I'll take the one from over there and put it in here just so that you get the idea. Up. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Even though there are also two eyepieces here, you do not get a stereoscopic view using those compound microscopes. And the reason is because there's only one objective here, so both eyes will receive the same image. This is different with the stereo microscopes because down here there are actually two different lenses, two different objectives. You cannot see it right now. I'd have to tip the microscope on the back, but there are actually two objectives here, and there is a separate light path for each eyepiece. So one here, the image is looked more from you can look at more from the left, one more from the right. Two different images, and you get a stereoscopic view. Here there's only one image, and it's split up, so both eyes receive the same image. Therefore, there is no stereoscopic view. And this is basically the same for all of those compound microscopes here, also the one over here. And those introductory microscopes, they only have one eyepiece for cost reasons and portability reasons. I'm going to talk about this later. Okay. Now, of course, it is possible to adjust the eye distance over here, and focusing is done by turning a one of two focus knobs here, the coarse focus and defined focus. And over here, this is called the mechanical stage. I'm able to put a slide on here, a glass slide, a microscope slide, and I'm able to move it using those two knobs here. The light source, in this case LED, that's the modern one that you have nowadays, there's an intensity control, for example. In many cases, the main switch can be found on the back, okay? Yeah, and you see that this one has no power connected to it because it's battery operated as well. Yeah? But you can also connect a power here, power source. This one over here, down here, this is called the condenser. And those introductory microscopes over there, they don't have that for cost reasons. Yeah? But the condenser is actually quite important because it allows you to control contrast and depth of field. So there is a lever over here, and it also bundles the light, so you also get a brighter image this way. Actually, for the more difficult to view specimens like bacteria, so it's absolutely essential, I think. Yeah? But again, children might be a little bit overwhelmed with all of those features that those microscopes have. Yeah, so this is basically one microscope that I just wanted to show you over here. All of them have a photo tube, but those models, they also come without a photo tube. I simply got the version with a photo tube because I like to do a lot of photography. But to save costs, you can of course also get those without photo tube. So this is the one that I showed you over here. I just wanted to make it clear that the microscope that I've got over here, this is my favorite one. Why is this my favorite one? Because it was the first one that I bought over 20 years ago, back in 1998. Wow, that's way over 20 years ago. It's not manufactured anymore. And this is the microscope that I've been using for many years. I'm still using it, of course. And ultimately, it's got the same features as the significantly lower cost microscopes of these days. I paid several thousand euros for that back in 98, and converted now, of course. At that time, so several thousand US dollars for that. Okay, same concept, of course. Fine focus knob, mechanical stage, power, all of these things. How is this one different from the others that you see over here? Is that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 objectives Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 objectives, while the other microscopes these days, they generally only have 4 objectives. Okay, so there are a couple of advantages that this one has as well. It's got a pretty powerful halogen lamp. Nowadays, most microscopes have LED. LED also has certain advantages. Yeah, so, but doesn't matter. That's this lever over here is able to redirect the light either out of the eyepieces or out of the photo tube. But otherwise, you see that the features of this microscope, which cost me several thousand, and one that costs now only several hundred, the features are pretty much the same. Yeah? There might be some differences in mechanical quality, but honestly, over the last 10, 15 years, the gap has been closing quite a bit. So always put something in here to prevent dust from falling in. So this one over here, that's also a pretty popular model which I've been recommending as well. Also got 4 objectives, same features, coarse and fine focus knob. Okay, same story. Okay, this one over here, it can be loosened and then you can rotate this. Yeah? And over here, also same concept. This one is quite interesting because it has quite an interesting power supply. If you go all the way down here, you're able to see that it has a USB. You can put in a USB and also connect it over to a battery here, yeah, or an external power adapter. Yeah, so basically, I try to make the following very clear to you, that the basic features of the microscopes here are pretty much the same. This one over here costs around 600 euros, maybe similar in US dollars. This one over here around 300 to 400. So what's the difference? Ultimately, it's not the magnification that counts, but it's the objectives which are a bit better here. So these are called plan objectives. They're also infinity objectives. And this means that the image quality of this one is a little bit better than the slightly cheaper microscopes. But I think this is not a huge difference. Yeah? It's a little bit like the law of diminishing returns. If you need a feature, then that cannot be found in one, then sometimes the price gap is quite considerable. Yeah? So. By the way, I made separate review videos of those microscopes anyway, so I'm just going to give you an overview right now, and simply to illustrate to you that the difference in features is not so much here I call them the mid-range microscopes. Okay, So now let's look at the introductory microscopes, and I promised that I'm going to make a separate video for buying microscopes for children. And here we notice that, of course, they're much smaller, much more portable, and of course much cheaper. So those microscopes here, they cost around $60 to $80, 60 to 80 euros plus minus. They are, if you just put them next to each other, remarkably similar in some respects. Look at this. Yeah? Look at the focus knobs here. They look the same. The stage looks the same. Over here, the lamp looks the same. Oh, that's interesting, huh? Over here, the lamp from the top looks the same. Yeah. Also, even if you take one from over there, yeah, it also has a lamp from the top, looks the same. The stage, yeah, has the same size. The clips look very similar. Also, the lamp down here. So, what's the difference here? Well, there is a slight difference between those microscopes, and the difference is that some of them have different objectives. So, look at the size of the objectives that this microscope has, compared to, let's say, this one over here. There is a significant difference. Yeah? And as a matter of fact, this microscope here has a slightly better image quality, especially at the high magnification of 40 times. You do notice that the contrast is much better than of those microscopes that have a smaller objective. Yeah, but why do they nearly cost the same? And the reason is because some of those microscopes come along with a really high quality documentation. Yeah? And this one really doesn't. So you see, there is this thing, what do you pay for? Yeah? Sometimes you pay for the microscope, and sometimes they come with pretty good accessories and really good documentation, especially for children. This can be very useful. So this kind of compensates this a little bit. But again, here we have, let's put, let's say those, a couple of them next to each other. Let's put those two together. Okay, so that's the Swift SW150, and that's the old TED microscope. And they look quite similar from the outside. Indeed, many of the parts are the same because those microscopes are all manufactured in China and then imported and rebranded. But this one here, the old TED, is really nice because it comes along with very good documentation, a set of very nice slides, good support. And this one over here essentially comes in a gray box, a brown box, and with very little documentation. Yeah? So you see, sometimes this is also contributes to the price difference. This one is also a little bit more expensive, one has to say. Okay, so and look, this one here can be rotated, and this one here cannot. Also the one over here cannot be rotated. This one here cannot be rotated. You can rotate it, but you have to actually loosen it here a little bit. Yeah, and then it can also be swing around. That's not a really big issue, I would say. But what I wanted to make clear is that you might not always see a huge difference on the outside, but sometimes it's the accessories and the support that also comes along. Yeah, see, very similar otherwise. Yeah? So all of those microscopes I highly recommend, by the way, right? So it only depends a lot on what emphasis you would like to place. Yeah? And for example, if you want to buy a present for a child, then don't underestimate the importance of documentation. This one, for example, here is yet a little bit smaller. It does not even have a coarse and a fine focus knob. Yeah? This one is called the junior scope. And also has small objectives. It doesn't even have a lens in here like the others have, but it comes along with a yet better documentation. Yeah? So there's really some nice, colorful information sheets included that allow children specifically to get started. And there's some tasks on there that kids can do, and so on. Yeah? So you see, the target group is a little bit different here. Yeah? And then of course this one over here as well. It's the National Optical or Swift SS110, again, very similar. Now, there is, if you look very carefully, an interesting difference here. Not that this makes a huge difference, but something noteworthy. The stage all looks the same here, but this plastic, this one is made of metal. And this is also one of the reasons why this microscope here is more expensive. Yeah, it's not only more expensive because of the larger objectives here, but also because it has more metal parts. Yeah? But again, you might not be able to notice that when you simply read through the description specifications on Amazon. Yeah? So that's why, So what should you get, in other words? Well, of all of these things, my general recommendations is if you are thinking about starting microscopy as a hobby, and if you're not really sure if it's something for you or not, then definitely start with one of those introductory microscopes to get your toes wet, as you say in English, because maybe you don't like the hobby, right? But if you have a initial curiosity and you have some money to spare, around $80 to $100 or euros, then by all means start with one of those microscopes, and then you're going to see if you like it or not, and this satisfies your initial curiosity. And then later on, I would say you can always think about different microscopes, because they are significantly more expensive, right? So the initial investment that you have really doesn't make a huge difference. So, but I'm going to go on now and to a different one. Look at this here. That's also an Olympus microscope. This one is from the late 1970s, 1980s. Has been in use in education in school for, well, almost 40 years. And I got it for free. Okay, because they were discarding, I'm a teacher in a school, and they were changing microscopes around so all teachers could take one along. And it was not functional because the focusing knobs could not be turned anymore because the lubrication oil solidified and it could not be turned. So I took the microscope and I gave it to an Olympus repair service company, because these are licensed companies, and I had to pay 200 euros just to get the microscope serviced. Can you imagine this? Just to get it serviced costs already more than twice than one of those introductory microscopes that you have here. Yeah? And for about 300 to 400 euros, you already get a microscope like this. Yeah? So why did I decide to do that? Because it's of extremely high quality. And I bought, for another 300 euros, I bought a phase contrast objectives and condenser, which you cannot get otherwise, right? But for Olympus, because it's been used so much in research and education and so on, for this reason it was available, and that's why I got additional parts and spare parts that otherwise would not have been possible. Just want to show you here my drawer what I have here. This is, for example, this is a camera adapter. It's dedicated Olympus camera adapter that goes up here on top. Yeah. And then I can connect a DSLR camera. Yeah. Gives me excellent quality. See, and that's stuff that is possible because the company designed everything as a set. Yeah. So, but again, used microscopes not automatically something that I recommend. Also because they're not cheap all the time. You can get very high quality in used microscopes, but it depends quite a bit on what condition they are, and it can also be that maybe it's maybe it's an incomplete microscope and you need to shop for additional objectives. Yeah. So that is basically the general overview that I want to give you here. What I did not talk about is I did not talk about real research microscopes. I mean, what's a real research microscope? Well, those microscopes here are all manufactured in China and then rebranded, but there are some brand microscopes from the big 4 microscope manufacturers, and they have an entirely different target group. Olympus, Zeiss, Nikon, Leica, no specific order. Yeah, and there are also some other companies like Euromex. This one, for example, is one Euromex microscope, which also offers very, very high quality microscopes, also for amateur. But you see, I'm not going to talk about those very high-end microscopes because they cost 10 times as much sometimes. Well, not 10 times as much, but the cheapest one that I was able to find was over €1,000. But the features were not different than the ones that you have over here. But you get so much more support and quality and resale value, and this is what you pay for. And they have dedicated, as I already mentioned, dedicated service companies that deal with them. So research and medicine, universities, they will probably use still microscopes of the high-end brands. But for right now, I hope I was able to give you a little overview. And if you think that all of those microscopes overwhelm you, I can always recommend make yourself a little Lego microscope like this one over here. It also works. Have a little bit of fun as well. Okay, so that's it. Separate video on buying microscope for children. But for today, wish you all the best and see you around next time. Bye-bye.